So if we're demonstrating in the air and you hear this trail, you might go, God, I keep hearing that delay. I'd like to hear it drive. But the thing is, in a track, and I'll demonstrate that right now, you don't hear it.
Okay, I got something real special for you guys today with the one and only Tim Pierce, talking about gear that Tim has had for a long time, used, or just gear that's really important to him, because I want this to really bring home the fact of learning how to really use the gear that you have. So Tim's going to be walking us through a bunch of gear that he has, and I think that we should all take note of how Tim is using it and why he's using it. So there's just tons of information here. If you would, please subscribe to Tim's channel. He has so much amazing stuff. He has a super cool masterclass that he offers, so you're learning from one of the best. And if you guys have time for it, subscribe to this channel as well. You can check out my Everything membership. That is linked down there as well. And yo, let's get into the video. Thanks again, Tim. You're awesome. And yo, let's get it. Hey, buddy.
Hey.
How are you doing?
I'm doing okay. Yeah. Enjoying the guitar life, just like you.
I mean, it's the only life to have, right?
Well, I have no choice at this point. Yeah. Probably you the same, yeah.
It's the only life we have anyway, so.
Exactly.
So yeah, so you said, we were talking before, and you had a couple pedals and amps and stuff that you wanted to talk about.
Well, the thing I want to talk about is there are pieces of gear that are lifetime pieces of gear. And, guitar players tend to chase tone constantly. So you're always thinking, oh, I'm going to get a better version of this, a better version of that. But there are things that I've found that are just lifetime great things that I don't have to seek or chase anymore. I'm going to start with the volume pedal because, as you might know, I use it. Yeah, right now it's a Dunlop. These have gotten really, really reliable, these new Dunlops. And it could be any volume pedal, but I use volume pedals mostly as a noise gate. So, every guitar tone that's good has some hiss to it, has some gain to it. Maybe the pickups are single coil, maybe they're P90s, your favorite P90s. So they have noise. But when you're recording, people have gotten used to hearing no extra noise. And then especially if you're using gain pedals in front, because I like, and this is something I think we all do, all my gain pedals are in front of the volume pedal. And all my time-based pedals, which are reverbs, delays, choruses, tremolos, they're all after the pedals so that because they don't make any noise and they can cascade. And when I pull this back and there's reverb, you still hear the reverb. And that's what you want. I think most of us know that, but that's a little reminder there. So what I do, if I have a high gain sound from, let's say, another lifetime pedal, the Karma ODR10. Now the Karma is the clone of an ODR1 that I got from John Shanks that he got from Tom Bukovac. So Mr. Bukovac was nice enough he would give these pedals away when he first got them. And I ended up with one and it became a lifetime favorite. Now you couldn't get this pedal. And if you did want to get it, you have to pay a lot these days. So both Keeley and my friend Greg Drummond have cloned it. So I'm going to activate it right now. Here's my sound. Going to turn it up a little bit for satisfaction. Okay, so that's just the amp. And right now, I better look and see which amp. Oh, it's my trusty Bad Cat. I thought it was the Divide by 13. It's the Bad Cat. So we'll get to those in a second. Mm-hmm. Now, I have a slightly gained up amp tone, edge of breakup, same words as everybody. But when I want more, I step on the Karma. Turn the Karma off, on. So it basically sounds like the amp, but just bigger, right? Okay.
Right.
Now that pedal is in front of the volume pedal. There's noise.
Oh,
and that's fine. That's fine. It's just everything you add that adds gain adds noise. So it's a habit now. I don't even think about it when I play. You don't see it because it's down there, but my volume pedal goes like this, and the noise is hidden 100% of the time. Now, the other great thing about a volume pedal is you can do this kind of thing. So that's good too. But for me, mostly it's hiding these beautiful pedals that sound great but add noise, and they're all in front of the volume pedal. Now, the other lifetime pedal I use. So if we say simply that the ODR1 Nobles kind of pedal is a lifetime pedal for me, and now I can get a Karma or a Keeley and get that same sound. Okay. And everybody can, which I like. I like everybody having access to the same tools. Another important gain pedal for me has always been the MXR microamp, but the version I use is the Custom Audio Electronics Boost Line Driver, and it just barely pushes the front end of the amp. So here's the amp, and here is the microamp. Now I can turn that up a little bit. Hitting it hard right now, but it's just a fist that hits the front end of the amp. So now we've got three things that are lifetime things for me. We have the microamp style pedal, the Nobles ODR1 style pedal, and the volume pedal.
So, a question for you with those: how long have you been using those three? Like, have they all been quite a while?
Okay, it eludes memory, but I think the volume pedal I started using the minute I had to get in the studio and sound like Michael Landau or Dan Huff or any of those guys. I had to have a volume pedal, and that's where it started. So we're talking late 80s, early 90s. I mean, these guys they were swelling in all the time with their volume pedals, and I guarantee they were hiding noise too when they had high gain sounds, right? Because all that gain, had to be, the volume pedal was in the chain, even with the Bradshaw rig, where it would hide all the massive gain from the, Mesa Boogies or whatever they were using.
I mean, you have to. I can only imagine when it's cranked up like that.
And then when John Shanks handed me the Nobles ODR1 in the early 2000s, that's when I started using that. And then I think around the same time, the MXR microamp or the CAE Boost Line Driver version started. So 20 years on the two gain pedals and 40 years on the volume pedal.
But that's why you're so good at using them. Like,
Yeah.
You've really like, it's like they're instruments, in a way.
And the thing is, if this is any comfort to guitar players, there are pieces of gear that you can use your whole life. And at a certain point, you don't have to chase everything. I mean, I don't chase Celestion speakers anymore. I've got the ones I like, And there's other things I have that I'm satisfied with. And that's why you see some of these really, really kind of iconic guitar players like Robin Ford or Larry Carlton or David Gilmour. Any of these people, at a certain point, they settle on a rig that's often not that fancy. It's often not that esoteric. It's like you get comfortable with, I can get the tones I need, and you're not always chasing the next thing. And that becomes a comfort. So I've got these pedals in front. And of course, there are other gain pedals. I have a loop, a GCX looper, and I have 8 slots in front of this volume pedal that are filled with different gain pedals. So I'm constantly experimenting and trying. And there are other things in front, a fuzz, definitely. Always good to have a fuzz, especially if you're using a Strat on the neck pickup. It's amazing clean tones you can get from a fuzz with a Strat. So there are other gain pedals, but the focus of this is to talk about, I think, the lifetime pedals that are essential to me and don't get changed out,
Yeah. So do you have any other pedals, any like modulation stuff that you have used for a long time, or?
Oh yeah. So what I've got now here in this studio, now of course on a pedal board it's different. I have a pedal board that has a, very trimmed down version of the things I need. But here it's so luxurious because I can add tons of stuff. So this top shelf right here, right? This top shelf has a lot of modulation stuff on it. And it's kind of the most essential stuff because it's right here within reach, And so if I activate this, let's see what we got. Okay, we're set up with a tremolo. Now, just FYI, I am monitoring a little bit of delay in Pro Tools. So that's another essential thing. Those are always negotiable. This delay that you hear, the minute it becomes annoying or too wet, I can just turn it off. So it's not getting printed. So that's what's great about that. I just love the way delay makes the guitar float. That little bit of delay trail, while you're hearing the chords and the notes, it just adds this dimension that's really, really wonderful. So now I have a tremolo on, and I use tremolo for basically one thing only. And it could be any tremolo, but I have a Boss that I've used for a long time. I really like it. Find a tremolo that is kind of, I'm going to use the word musical, that is, kind of soft around the edges. Most of them have that setting. But here's the way I use it. Let me show you. All that is kind of a dotted quarter or a triplet against the track. I always go for that. It's essential.
It's like you're in a whole different environment all of a sudden.
And it's not radical or anything. It's just like, I picture somebody playing a Fender Rhodes with a tremolo on it from the 60s, and just that little bit of soft kind of modulation. Now, another thing that's a favorite of mine that I don't get to use that often because people are a little afraid of it because it's a pitch shift pedal. You use that, you use it on sessions and people go, yeah, just make it plain because it's changing the pitch, but I love it.
That sounds well. I mean, that's what Eddie used a lot was pitch shift on like Run Around
Right.
and all that. I mean, Eventide.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, which are also great too. Yeah. Anyway, so another pedal that's over here, which is really useful, is the Echo Park, and I use it for infinite delays. So let me try and set it right real quick. That becomes like a pad that you put over the track. I mean, I've done thousands of layers of those because the people I've worked with have always wanted, and then they move them around. It sounds like this beautiful keyboard pad that floats over the track. You don't know what it is. That's a very valuable thing for me. There are probably other delays that do it, but not every infinite delay sound is musical. This one degrades in the most musical way.
well, I think that seems to be a theme. I mean, everything you're playing is adding musical texture to your playing. Like your playing's already musical, and then you're working with the stuff. Like it all just ebbs and flows together.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks. And then here I have an analog delay for extra delay. Let's turn it on. I'm a big fan of these new analog delays that come out, and this is a good one. It's Boss. Let me exaggerate the mix. It got away from me. Anyway, I like delays that are darkened and modulated. And I'm not alone in that. You don't want too much top end on your delay. And that way it really disappears behind the tone and just lets the signal float. And I love a little bit of modulation, the warped vinyl kind of thing. So these are all essential pedals. And, I'll use reverbs too. I love reverb pedals. But it could be really any reverb. I don't have a particular one. Just like you, we get to try a lot of different pedals from different brands. And, whether you're using a Strymon or, a UA reverb, you're going to get some amazing stuff at this point. So then the other essentials for me have been the guitar and the amp. Okay. So it's funny. I've always kind of gravitated towards the twin humbucker guitar for tones. I use Strats, I use Fenders, but at a certain point, studio guitar playing, it just seemed that these, and I think a lot of Nashville players ended up there too. it just took a while, and Nashville players morphed from like the early days of Tellys and Strats into more Gretsch and Gibson style guitars. I mean, you guys still use everything in Nashville, but I kind of settled on the double humbucker pickup guitar. And in the 90s, I've told you about this. I had an EVH guitar that was actually one that Eddie owned, and I bought it, and I ended up selling it, and I wish I still had it, but it was the Music Man EVH. And because it had the Floyd Rose system, it stayed perfectly in tune, so I trusted it. So instead of using a Les Paul in the studio, I did a lot of my tracking with this EVH guitar, which basically sounded like a Les Paul, but stayed perfectly in tune because of the Floyd Rose. And I've gotten better at keeping guitars in tune, and my guitars are set up better, so I don't really have that problem anymore. But now I really love a Les Paul style guitar for most sounds. So that's become a lifetime thing. And then there are two guitars that I have that I've kind of designed. This one is lightweight. It has fat frets and it has a 60s slim taper neck. And this will be a lifetime guitar. This is something that I, designed with Heritage. And then it's basically the cousin of this one I designed with Paul. And the benefit of this one is that it has the one-piece bridge, which always sounds great on any electric guitar. So these are becoming lifetime guitars too. Certain things, get there, and this is pretty new, but we spent about a year and a half kind of figuring this out, and I'll be using this forever. It just feels right. It's got the right frets, the right weight, the right tone, everything. So there was an amp that was my go-to amp in the 90s. And I talked to you about this.
Yes, I'm pumped.
And let me activate it. Now, one other really important thing for me is an amp switcher. So there are 3 brands out there, I think, that are contenders. The one I use is the Kahayan, and I need to be able to switch amps and speaker cabinets at the press of a button because I, move fast. You're trying to serve clients, you're trying to do things, you want to move fast. So I use a Kahayan. He's a friend of mine, but Amp Pete's a great one, and there's another one out there too that's really good. Anyway, so if I figure out where I put this, it's 16, I think. I put this at the very end. Okay, the story behind this nailer, it was in the 90s, and I started using it for almost every session. Now, what that meant was, if I did a big session with a big producer and there was cartage, this would come along with 8 other amps, and I would choose between Matchless, Vox, Fender, Marshall, whatever, we would audition amps for each part. But there was always a nailer in the mix. But when I went to work by myself or I worked at home, I had 3 of these. So I had one for home, one for the trunk of my car, and one at cartage. And this is also common with you guys in Nashville. You'll have one to carry and one at cartage, pretty much of everything. That's really common for a studio player. It just becomes convenient that way. But I had to have 3 because I had to have one at home. I started recording at home, one for the trunk of the car that I take up to somebody's home studio like Trevor Horn or something, and then one at cartage. I only have one now, and I kind of miss the other 2 just because they're pretty hard to find, but I only need one. Now, let me just show you why this amp appealed to me, okay? Well, first I'll say it in plain terms. The way the gain stage on this, the taper of it, it's the smoothest increase in distortion I've ever heard. So.
Oh, yeah.
There is no point when it's not right. It's just sweet from 0 to 10. And most amps, they have a spot where it's better. And then it gets a little hashy when you turn it up too much or a little thin when you turn it down. Not this. Really, I've always loved this amp, and I don't use it much anymore because now there are so many other good amps. Now, the Divided by 13 became my go-to in the 2000s because it sounded more soft and warm, really, in some ways, more Nashville. I mean, it sounds like an old Fender. See, now I'm thinking, well, maybe I have too much delay on it. Delay is an addiction, and I always feel a little guilty about it. So I just took a little off. But so this is my new. I mean, the Divided by 13, this particular amp was designed by Rusty Anderson and Fred Tacone. And it's my favorite Divided by 13. It was designed by a guitar player and an amp builder, and they worked really hard on it. And I do have 3 of these because really from the early 2000s till now, that was my formula. 1 for cartage, 1 for the car, and 1 for home. So this replaced the nailer. And the way I would get more gain out of this is just to step on the ODR1, step on a gain pedal, and then I could get, really, really sweet high gain sounds. But this is like the cross between the ultimate Fender, Vox, and Marshall. It's kind of a hybrid of the 3 families, really. You can get kind of, and it's sweet. It's really sweet sounding. And then we move on, and this Bad Cat Hot Cat is a great new amp. Bad Cat makes really good circuits. You know that. You've heard them. You played them. You have one probably, right? Or 2. It's anyway. That kind of covers it. And when you get into a speaker cabinet, like if I'm taking, I have a favorite 112 that's a PRS 112 because it's really lightweight, and it sounds really good. I take a 112 and 1 head and a pedal board to sessions now. I don't even really have a big rig that I take to sessions anymore, and it works great. I choose the guitars I want, throw them in, and I don't know. Can you think of anything else that I might have skipped? Those are the essentials. Those are the lifetime essentials for me, really.
Yeah, I mean, I think, to me, I was excited about the nailer, and I think to anyone who doesn't know, I believe it's the same nailer that started Reverend Guitars.
Yeah, it's Joe Naylor. Yeah, he sold that company at a certain point, and he started Reverend. Yeah,
yeah. So just thanks for sharing all that stuff with us. I like you said, delay is an addiction. I'm like, can you ever have too much delay? I want it on everything all the time.
Well, the thing is, in my defense over my addiction, I'm going to demonstrate to you how the delay disappears in a track. So if we're demonstrating in the air, and you hear this trail, you might go, God, I keep hearing that delay. I'd like to hear it dry. But the thing is, in a track, and I'll demonstrate that right now, you don't hear it. Because the track eats it up.
Yeah.
So you get this float, and you feel this float, and it just adds dimension, but the track is hiding the trails. So that's what I've always done. I don't want you to hear the delays when I'm using them. I just want them to add dimension.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And it helps, like, you feel it under your hands. Like, it just makes it feel good for the player. So, you're not hearing it, but you're hearing the player feel it, or there's some kind of weird play happening there.
Yeah, you're hearing the player respond to it, and like I said, it just adds dimension. So I'm good dry. Like I'll bypass it right now, and I can quit. Anytime. Okay, now it's just reverb. Okay, come on, let's see if we can turn off the reverb too. Let me find the track in this big session. There it is. Okay. Little plate. Man, I love Sound Toys plugins. Okay. Dry. Good sound. What am I using? I'm using the Karma ODR 10, and I am in Divided by 13.
I was going to ask, what's funny about the Divided is you've influenced some very close friends of ours to buy one of those, and I'm looking to get one too. So you've infected us all with the Divided by 13 tone chasing.
Well, you'll love it, and everybody has their favorites, but to me, once I heard this one that he made with Rusty, I never looked back. I had some other models. I tried other models, but at a certain point, it was like, oh, this is the one.
Yeah.
It's just, and it's a lifetime sound.
Yeah. Do you have? Is there anything else that you can think of that you want to show, or?
No, I think I covered the most important essentials. Now, there are other things like I have H9 harmonizers, the little old white ones, and with the app, those are amazing with the app.
Yeah.
So there are other things that I've discovered over the years that are lifetime things, but I don't use those all the time. They're not necessary all the time. A good Leslie pedal is always great. I have the ventilator, which is an old pedal, and then the Strymon Leslie pedal is really good. It's nice to have a Leslie.
Oh, always.
I don't use a lot of compressors. I should, but compressors are a good thing. Oddly, a compressor can be just a clean boost.
That's true. Well, and you play with your amps because you have an actual loud room, war room that you can crank the amps up. So I mean, they're kind of compressing on their own because you get to have them so loud.
That's right. I set the amp to where it's stadium loud, jet engine loud. I mean, even an 18-watt amp is almost too loud to stand in front of.
Right.
So they're loud and they compress themselves. So you're right. The tones I seek are not the cleanest tones. They just become clean when I pick lightly. So
Yeah.
I like all the dynamic range of having an amp at the edge of breakup where it self-compresses, and then I pick soft for clean, and then gradually pick harder and harder for dirtier and dirtier.
That's cool. Well, I mean, I think one of the big takeaways that I'm getting from this, and I think everyone else will too, is that, they're all tools that contributed, something musically that you found that was like, oh, this serves this purpose. It's not necessarily about collecting gear. It's like, this is a tool that helped create music.
Yeah, that's the practical side of being a working musician. People, they want to hear something and you have to give it to them. And it was agony in the 80s trying to put together rigs that sounded as good as Michael Landau or Dan Huff or Steve Lukather or the guys out here. And I finally did it. And then actually in the 90s, I finally started going, wait a second, I can just do this with amp heads. People like mono. They're going back. So it became easier to me when the stereo rigs went out of fashion. And then I would show up with a Matchless or a Vox and a Marshall or a Fender or I had a Dr. Z back then too. I had an old Dr. Z way back. Yeah. Great amps. And then it was easier just playing through an amp. But it's all practicality. And that's why I say I like for everybody to be able to afford everything. So I'm really happy there are clones of the ODR1. So you don't have to pay $1,500 for a vintage pedal.
Yeah. Well, I just ordered a Karma the other day. So
Great.
I was like, that'll solve my Nobles needs. Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that'll be it, man. Thanks so much for taking the time to show us this stuff. I really do appreciate it.
Me too. Love your channel and love your guitar playing too. Every time I see one of your videos, I want to text you and go, wow, I love that song and those licks. And I love the musical part of your videos. So way to go, man.
Yeah, I mean, I love how you can use the same licks in every song. It's very it's very convenient. That's what your text is actually going to say to me.
I don't hear that, but that's hilarious.
Awesome. Thank you, buddy.
I'll see you on the next one.
Yep. And there we have it. So I hope you guys learned something from it. I really did. Learning how to actually properly use gear and stuff is something that's still pretty new to me. I always just kind of played and didn't really focus too much or realize how important it was to know how to actually use the gear that you have. So it's something that I'm working on. Stuff like this I think is really helpful. And maybe this is a series you guys would like to see continue, talking to different guys here around town or just players who have played for a while and who have this history with gear or gear that has led them to what they're using now today. So anyways, like I said before, subscribe to Tim's channel. I will see you all later. Have a good rest of your day. Into bluesy. Unplugged. I'm apparently tuned to drop D. There we have it. Bye, guys.